Director Mark Connie is on fire. At the awards ceremony, he said he wanted to know the ending of a novel. That novel broke off when I was 18 years old. It was 18 years old when we were separated. 8 years later, I reopened the novel and finished it. The girl said to the boy, "Hug me." As soon as the trailer of the awards ceremony came out, director Mark Connie liked to mention many hot searches. Is not only because he directed the hit drama, Flowers, but also because of his appearance, which can be called Yangoose gluttonous feast. Obviously, you can rely on your face, but you have to fight for your talent. Handsome guy. Let's take a look at internal entertainment. How did he be cold and gentle? I deleted and subtracted, and inserted a sentence in those tens of thousands of comments. Congratulations, you got what you wanted. He wanted to be a good director, and I knew when I was 13. When Flowers first aired, there wasn't much splash, and I only went to watch it after I saw the director's name in the introduction. Director, Mark Connie. I didn't even put a photo, but I was stunned for a long time. I was on my phone, waiting for him to attend the live broadcast of the awards. A few minutes before the live broadcast started, my Weibo suddenly had more followers. I curiously clicked to see it. Breathing stopped for a moment, and layers of sweat broke out in the palms. Mark Connie shut me back. I registered on Weibo after watching Flowers, and I followed almost all the participants in Flowers, and occasionally published movie reviews on Kawa. Before the awards trailer came out, Mark Connie had never been seen in the public eye. Occasionally I hear his voice in the highlight video, as cold and firm as when he was a teenager, as if he was by his side and never left. I clicked into his homepage with bated breath, and breathed a sigh of relief. He followed dozens of people at once, and there were a few nobodies like me. When you think about it, you can't help but feel funny. From the beginning, from the time my mom was the cooking aunt of his family, we were destined to be two parallel lines far apart. So when he's on stage, I look at him through the screen, which is a normal distance. When he clicked into the live broadcast room, Mark Connie was already holding the trophy of Best New Director, and fans swiped the screen and even blocked his face. I had to turn off the barrage. The host asked him, "Do you have any faith when you step into this business?" He replied, "I want to know the ending of a novel." The camera abruptly cuts to actress Chloe, who is the only significant female character in Flowers. She is a sister in the entertainment industry, but in the camera, she shows an unprecedented shy nymphomaniac. In previous interviews, she also mentioned director Mark Connie more than once, talking about his professionalism, praising his thoughtfulness, and saying how much she liked him. The contrast between the drag sister and the fan sister, the collision of cold and heat, isn't true love. I opened the barrage, and it was full of discussions about the CPs of the two of them. Isn't this good looking? I have one thing to say, I recognize this brother-in-law. Chloe has that side too. They are disturbed, and most of them are optimistic. No one cares what Mark Connie says. I want to know the ending of a novel. In my sophomore year of high school, Mark Connie and I both took liberal arts. The head teacher was puzzled. Mark Connie said he wanted to make a story. I was silent. At that time, I had so low self-esteem that I couldn't even say the most widespread dreams of my youth. Later, Mark Connie took my storybook and submitted it to me for a fiction contest. He dangled the trophy in front of me. Stupid, I don't even know I'm good. We still shared the table by the window, and when there was sunshine, he always liked to sleep on his stomach facing me. One day I was writing an outline, and he squinted his eyes and muttered, "In the future, you write the story, and I will shoot the story." At that time, I was still young, and I really looked forward to the future. I also thought that would be our future. My debut novel on the site was written with my own story. When I was 11 years old, my mom and I were abandoned by my dad. My mother took me to the city, and she said that with her, she didn't have to be afraid of anything. My mom was hired by Connie's family as a cooking aunt, and occasionally helped pick up Mark Connie from school, and that's how I got to know Mark Connie. 3 years later, my mother swallowed an overdose of sleeping pills in a cramped rental house, leaving me with only a bank card. I was abandoned again. Mark Connie took me home, and said he didn't want to change tables, and wanted me to live well. After the story was written in bits and pieces until the college entrance examination, I didn't continue to update it. In 8 years, I wrote more than a dozen articles, but I never dared to open that one again. I don't know if Mark Connie saw it later. I don't know if he. The memory was interrupted by the host in the live broadcast. In the past 2 days, Mark Connie's fans have found a video of you playing the piano in high school. At the call of the majority of fans, we have prepared a piano for you on the spot. I wonder if Mark Connie can play it shallowly. My heart sank, thinking that he should play well. But the moment he turned around and saw the piano, his whole head trembled. The scene was a mess, and in the last picture of the live broadcast, he was lying there motionless. I booked a ticket for the fastest flight to his city. The journey to the airport was too long, and I went through the news about him. The driver confirmed my physical condition several times, and I shook my head in a trance. The pain of despair to the bone was exactly the same as when I saw my mother lying stiffly on the bed with an empty bottle of sleeping pills next to her pillow. It wasn't until the next congested section that I swiped a video of him being helped to the bathroom from an informal channel. Soon, his Weibo also updated the dynamic. I'm fine. Also, I'm not a public figure, so don't bother me. Hot reviews are closed. 2 words. Received. I asked the driver to go back the way he came. There are many news about him on the hot search, and the most striking one is, Mark Connie fainted on the piano. Speaking of which, I should be the one who is sensitive to the piano. The piano is Mark Connie's only hobby, so his parents hired a family piano teacher. Mr. Dillon taught him for 4 years and was one of the most respected by him. After the college entrance examination, he followed his parents back to his hometown, during which Mr. Dillon asked him to go to his house to get a professional document. Mark Connie told me to pick it up. I didn't expect it to be a nightmare. Teacher Dillon is elegant, but the moment he closes the door, the posture of the beast is vividly displayed. I didn't dare to think about what had happened, except that I was curled up on the piano and he took the camera, and shot and then pressed up. The moment I wanted to die, his phone rang, and he let me go. He threatened me that if I said half a word, he would post the photos and videos online. Mark Connie will dislike me, and the whole world will abandon me. How could Mark Connie dislike me? But I was afraid of being abandoned, and I couldn't let myself go. So I volunteered to leave Connie's house. I didn't go to the same college as Mark Connie, and I said I wanted to live my life with Ivy Evans, not with him. Mark Connie nodded, okay. On the day I left, he asked me if I had anything to say to him. I shook my head. Soon after my freshman year, I heard that the family had gone abroad. You see, the trajectories of our lives are inherently parallel. His bright future is magnificent, and none of it has anything to do with me. So how could he stress the piano? I took another look, and the hot search disappeared out of thin air, and the slightest trace was gone. Maybe I'm hallucinating. Clicking on Mark Connie's Weibo private message, I stayed for a long time. It's like every time I've been in a daze before, I've been in his Facebook chat box when I react. We didn't delete friends from each other, but we were silent with each other for 8 years. Or maybe he's already switched to Facebook. He didn't know it was my Weibo, so it's not out of line to ask as a fan, right? I barely convinced myself. Again, I deleted and subtracted, and finally I thought out 5 words. How are you? He has so many fans now, he definitely won't read private messages. But I still read the message every few seconds, and finally simply logged out. A few minutes later, I boarded it again, but a red dot appeared on the message interface. Mark Connie replied to me. He replied, I'm fine, don't worry. After graduating from college, I went to town and became an elementary school teacher. The days go by slowly, and occasionally I go on a business trip because of the novel, even if I experience a fast-paced life. The news of a crew stationed is enough to make the town boil. On the day the town boiled, I was on a business trip. As soon as I entered the airport, a person ran in front of me. It was Chloe, who had been hotly searched recently. Immediately after that, a group of fans came from all over and easily circled me. Chloe was still running, and I was pushed and chased by the fans, and I lost my balance when I didn't follow a step. I closed my eyes and waited for the impact on the floor, but suddenly my waist was grabbed, and my legs bent and hung completely in the air. When I opened my eyes, Mark Connie had already put me down, and he took my wrist and walked forward. The tall and straight back is a sense of security that cannot be touched in the video. Thank you. Thank you. I struggled and let out a loud voice. I imagine what it would be like for us to meet again. Maybe say hello politely, or pass by strangely. But it's not like I'm embarrassed. He didn't look back, didn't let go, and didn't respond. Coldly, it's very different from before. All the way to the gate, he let go of his hand, and was about to turn around. I mustered up the courage to say again, "Thank you, Mark Connie." His expression finally loosened a little. The moment he looked up and looked at him, it seemed as if 10,000 years had passed. He chuckled, "Ivy Evans, you remember me. How could you not remember? Even if it was really 10,000 years, I think it would be hard for me not to remember him." Before I could say something, a figure ran over in the distance. It was Chloe, who circled around with the fans and made a beeline for Mark Connie. I went to the boarding line in a familiar way, but my attention was on their conversation getting farther and farther away. "Mark Connie, who's that girl?" "An old man." "An old man." His speech is still incomprehensible. For example, on the day of the college entrance examination, it was raining heavily, and when I walked out of the examination room, he was already waiting for me with an umbrella. I tried to run towards him, and he made a pause gesture to stop me. Looking at the college entrance examination students, who were recklessly raining outside the umbrella, I poked him. "Let's get wet in the rain too, right?" He leaned closer to me. "You can't have your period." My face was hot and I sighed. "After graduation, I won't be able to see each other every day in the future." He looked at the vast rain and fog and chuckled. "We're just graduating, not breaking up." The rain was so loud that I wondered if I had misheard, and wanted to make sure again. "What did you say?" "If you don't hear it, forget it." He lifted his chin arrogantly, and didn't say it again until the end. The memories are interrupted by a hint of the arrival of the flight. I turned on my phone, and the messages in my colleagues group turned out to be 99 plus. It's about Mark Connie leading the crew to settle in town. In the group chat photos, there are several frontal photos of Mark Connie. I pressed it a few times in a row to save. Soon, the director and all the members in the group, the picture can't be transmitted. Otherwise, their team will get to the bottom of it. Especially Mark Connie. Especially him. Since the last time he fainted at the live broadcast, no new picture of him has appeared on the internet. Kawa and the fan base have been removed, and even his enclosed CP Kawa will inevitably disband. Everyone talked about it, and the most liked comment was, "He is for Chloe, who likes to be analyzed by netizens when he falls in love." It makes sense to think about it. As soon as the director finished sending the message, a back photo of Mark Connie and Chloe in the same frame popped up in the group. The girl's long hair was blown by the wind, and a lock stuck to the boy's shoulder, which was perfectly frozen. "It's good to the eyes and a good match." The director indifferently sent a. The photo was quickly withdrawn. Originally, I was squeezing in time for a 2-day business trip, and it was over in a day and a half. The time to change the ticket. A man leaned over next to him. The eyebrows and eyes are somewhat familiar, but I shouldn't recognize them. He wore a mask and smiled impudently. "We don't know each other, but you and my dad should know each other." "Your dad is?" "My dad is a piano teacher. His name is Dylan." He stared at me playfully. "My name is Malcolm." I was stunned, and I panicked with disgust, and the look was all too familiar. Every time I wake up from a nightmare, it's because I look at each other like that. I instinctively took 2 steps back, and before I could react, he had already snatched the ticket and took a look. It was probably because his flight was about to board, and after reading it, he hurriedly threw it to me, leaving a sentence: "I'm going to play with you another day." Because of Malcolm, my rather high mood hit rock bottom. Why am I excited? Because Mark Connie is in town. Because I'll soon be able to breathe the same air as him. Maybe I'll have a chance to meet him. I wanted to get closer to him, but now that the memories of the nightmare are flooding back, I thought I'd better slow down to the town. Heaven seemed to hear my prayers. After getting off the plane, the taxi from the airport to town broke down halfway through. The driver sighed and asked me to stop the car again. But this dark night is coming. The mountain roads are crisscrossed, and few cars pass by. Isn't that it? The master pointed to the corner of the intersection. The lights are getting brighter and brighter. The cars are turning around, and the people are getting clearer and clearer. It's Mark Connie. He stopped next to him, the window dropping, and glanced over without the slightest emotion. Chloe in the passenger seat shouted enthusiastically, "Hey, isn't this your old friend? Come on, come on." I was pushed into the back seat by the taxi driver. I thanked him first, and Chloe waved her hand generously. "Just drop by. How much more do you know each other?" There was a brief silence in the car, and soon Chloe turned back and asked, "How did you meet?" "Classmates are still." "Chloe, do you know the lines by heart?" Mark Connie spoke. "I've carried it. Don't you question whether my profession is good?" "Shoot a night scene tonight," Mark Connie added. "Isn't it? Can't you take pity on the jade?" "I'm in pain," Chloe murmured at him, and he looked calmly ahead, motionless. They had such a good relationship. I was stunned, and looked up at the moon outside the car window. When we got to town, Mark Connie put Chloe down and dropped me off. I excused myself and said I wanted to take the bus, and he sighed. "Ivy Evans, the last train has passed." Silent all the way downstairs. When I got out of the car, I turned back and said, "Thank you." He leaned back into the car. "You guys, it's like I'm the one who drove you back." Ching Lang frowned slightly, but a light smile quickly appeared at the corner of his mouth. I couldn't guess what that smile meant, and I didn't know how to answer it, so I just changed the subject. "Congratulations, best new director." He seemed to froze. "You see, I have a friend who's a fan of you, and it's hard for me not to notice." "Thank you," he said politely. "My friend also said that you haven't moved since the awards ceremony, and you have done a good job of protecting your privacy. Aren't you too?" "The great writer Sanshui. You can't even find a photo on the internet." He answered the call quickly, and before I could react, he added, "Chloe is a fan of Sanshui's books, and she and I are just idols and fans." The shadow of his car quickly disappeared into the moonlight, and I looked up at the moon again. Today's moon is shining with a warm glow. For a moment, my heart felt like a rain of rain had passed through the barrenness. After all, it was just a moment. Over the next few days, I received frequent friend verification messages from strangers with the profile picture Malcolm. He said he still had a video of the photos Dylan had taken. He also said that the girls in the photos and videos are so sexy. You see, God never seemed to want me to live with my heart. When the crew came to our school for filming, I was sure that Chloe was a fan of my books. The filming took place on the weekend, and the director arranged for several of our young teachers to come to the scene to cooperate. The other teachers took turns being nymphomaniac, and I stood to the side, occasionally glancing at my back in front of the monitor. It's like an island with ease, exactly like what I imagined. Chloe waited next to me, playing with her phone and muttering, "My wife, can this be changed?" Remembering what Mark Connie had said, I leaned over and said, "What novel are you chasing?" "Classmates. Have you seen it?" "I'll tell you about." "Very good looking." I didn't hear what she said clearly. I only saw her full screen of tipping records. Classmates is my debut novel, and after I broke off, there were frequent reminders to change, and there were not a few rewards. But there is only one person who has persevered until now, and the reward is huge. I have privately messaged her many times and tried to return the tip money to her, but she always turned a blind eye. I didn't expect this reader to be Chloe. I advised her, don't give a tip, she won't do more. She stubbornly, I don't care, I want to see it, I'm willing to pay for it. With that, I have to pay again. I can't resist her. I have to admit it. I am Sanshui, Mrs. Sanshui. She, what are you? She yelled, and the eyes of the entire crew converged, including Mark Connie's. She soon discovered Huadian, the table mate, who writes about Ivy Evans in the book is Mark Connie. Mark Connie. Could it be Mark Connie? I was so anxious that I covered her mouth. It's not him. Don't get me wrong. It's me. A cold voice came overhead, and Mark Connie stood up to him, held up the walkie-talkie, and shouted, Chloe is ready for shooting. I froze in place, not moving. Chloe was so excited that she couldn't even get her position out of order. My favorite director and favorite author. Who knows? The staff shook their heads, indicating that they did not understand. And then, Chloe always asks me questions. Then there was no story. And now you're meeting again. What now? I lowered my head. There won't be a story now. Some things, without an ending, are already the end. Shooting until midnight. I squinted in the lounge area for a while. In a daze, someone picked me up. Familiar breath. I didn't open my eyes. He carried me all the way to the car and drove downstairs to my house. And he didn't get out of the car or call me, but I seemed to feel that as soon as I opened my eyes, I can meet his gaze. I don't know how long it took, but when I was really about to fall asleep, he opened his mouth. Really? Can't you? Is there another story? When Chloe wasn't playing, he started to play with me often. She always complains the most about Mark Connie, said that he had recently taken gunpowder, and said that she had been scolded by him 5 times today. On that day, their crew had a rare holiday, and she took me to climb the mountain to relax. The mountains in the town are rugged, and young people like them. Occasionally, a few people bumped into on the road, and everyone could nod their heads. Chloe is different. She wears sunglasses and a mask, and she always yells at strangers, hello. The next few young people overtook us, but Chloe rolled her eyes at them. It's Mark Connie and a few of the crew's buddies. You, Mark Connie, you're in good shape, Chloe said in a weird way. Mark Connie pulled her aside and whispered a few words. After a few words, Chloe left me behind and walked on with the rest of the group. It was just me and Mark Connie, and I deliberately slowed down, and Mark Connie slowed down. I simply stopped. What did you say to Chloe? I said Ivy Evans should go with Mark Connie. I choked, started too fast, and tripped over a stone. Mark Connie held me up and followed me all the way. We tacitly did not speak again, just as we tacitly did not mention 8 years ago since we met again. After descending the mountain, they shouted that they were going to kill Mark Connie. Mark Connie seemed to see me leaving, and stood up to me early. Let's have a meal together. It's been a long time since we've eaten together, he said again. I glanced up at him. Yes, it's been a long time since we've eaten together. We used to eat 3 meals a day together. The most expensive box in town is also equipped with singing equipment. When I sat down, my partner poured the wine first, and when it was time for me, Mark Connie pressed my glass. She can't drink it. I lifted my glass. I can drink it now. He froze, chuckling and leaning back in his chair, his voice low. Well, grown up, in the past, at class reunions, he would say that I was a poor drinker and always refused to let me drink. Actually, I didn't touch it at all. He always said, that's what the adults drink. I was speechless. You're not an adult. And now, I'm a 26-year-old adult. It's just Mark Connie, who doesn't seem to have reacted yet. Later, after drinking wine, I realized that wine is really a good thing. It numbs the mind and makes the longing fade, make people more like themselves. Chloe went to sing when she was full, and I followed. You can't get too close to Mark Connie, or you'll always be easily caught up in memories. The memories are too ambiguous, like knives. After a few songs, the couch sank slightly, and Mark Connie sat down next to me. He seemed to have drunk a lot of wine again. His cheeks were red, and his eyes were misty. We were only a finger's walk away, and the arms of the two of us would touch the ground, which would also make my heart warm. I don't know who soared the high note, and the lyrics are the sentence, "Time will verify how much I love you, just quietly grow up with you." People always like to substitute everything when they are sensitive, and the boy who grew up with me is looking at the screen seriously at the moment. Then he whispered, "Ivy Evans, you're now a lot like when you were leaving Connie's house 8 years ago. The high pitches are all around, and there are only two of us, as if there is a barrier between them." I could hear every word he said. He leaned back on the couch and tilted his head, his voice hoarse. "Are you leaving me again?" At that moment, the line of defense I had worked so hard to build collapsed. He's Mark Connie, the only warmth in my scribbled hopeless life. Just thinking of his name makes my heart throb with pain. I just want him to be good. But now, he's not as good as I thought. So what's the point of my stubborn persistence? I leaned back on the couch and met his half-conscious face. "Mark Connie, I've had a bad thing lately. If I can fix it, I'll tell you all about it." "Okay." On the way home from work, you have to pass an unfinished building, and it is not long after Malcolm appears in this place. He took off his mask, looked even more hideous, and leaned over to me step by step. I stepped back. "What do you want to do?" "My dad was seriously injured and imprisoned. I have no home and no future. What do you think I want to do?" He gritted his teeth, and what he said was comforting. "Dylan is seriously injured and imprisoned, which sounds like a painful affair. But what does this have to do with me?" The man was beaten by Mark Connie, and the prison was sent by Connie's family. He sneered, "I'm going to make it better for you all to live." After the words fell, they rang in my ears countless times. I burst into tears. So Mark Connie knew everything. He knew everything. Malcolm easily cornered me and leaned over to take a closer look at me. "No wonder my dad is obsessed with you. You do have a bit of a look. Come, let me experience it." Similar eyebrows and eyes to his father. The same vulgar desires. I am not as desperate as I was then. I felt for the knife hidden in my bag, thinking, what a big deal. Let's die with him. He must not be allowed to go to Mark Connie again. But the moment his hand touched mine, a force pushed him out. Mark Connie stood in front of me, pulling me back and turning back. He said, "Don't look back." The eyebrows and eyes are gentle, and the tone is also gentle. I didn't look back. I heard Malcolm's arrogant shouts, which gradually changed to begging for mercy. I heard the sound of fist banging continuing, but I didn't hear a single sound from Mark Connie. Then, the sirens sounded. I was outside the police station, waiting for Mark Connie to come out. His black tracksuit was covered in dust. Blood was still oozing from the corners of his mouth, and so were his fists. He stood in front of me and just looked at me. This is the first time. Tearing 8 years of eye contact. "Did you beat Dylan like that 8 years ago?" I was speechless, barely breathless. His eyes were red. There was a quarrel at the door, and a police officer ran out to mediate, but the area between me and his side was still silent. It wasn't until they finished arguing that the police gave us a strange look as they passed by. Mark Connie finally spoke. He cautiously asked, "Do you still blame me?" I was slightly stunned. "If I hadn't asked you to go to Dylan's house to pick up something, if I hadn't shown up in time, or if I hadn't—" "Mark Connie," I interrupted, "you hug me." He paused incredulously. You hug me, I repeat. The warm embrace held me tighter and tighter. 8 years ago, the day I left Connie's house, Mark Connie asked me if I had anything to say to him. I shook my head. Actually, there is. I want him to hug me. I want to always remember that I like the taste of people. But the haze was so heavy that I didn't dare to look him in the eye. And now, the burning breath is around my ears, and the haze seems to have dissipated. In June, the weather changed, and as soon as the final exams ended, it began to rain heavily. The children were picked up by their parents, and I could only look around, thinking about rubbing a certain teacher's umbrella, and the next second, I saw Mark Connie. He also saw me, made a pause gesture, and walked up the steps, step by step. Seeing my confused expression, he raised an eyebrow. I'm here to pick you up from school. It's after work, not after school, I corrected. Okay, Ivy Evans is what he says. He put me in an umbrella and leaned towards me more. Chloe waved at us downstairs at my house, with a large bag in her hand, mostly filled with wine. Drink with me. You two are going to drink with me. Mark Connie sighed softly. She seems to have fallen out of love. What a broken love. It's the guy you have a crush on who gets married. Back at home, Chloe quickly gets drunk. None of us have ever been together. It's not even to fall out of love. Crushes are bitter. I've known for a long time. I bless you. I hope you grow old together. She whimpered and cried, cupping my face. But I like you. I really like you. As she said that, she slowly approached, and was about to kiss me, when Mark Connie grabbed her, and threw her to the corner of the couch. I smiled awkwardly. First kiss. It's almost gone. Mark Connie indifferently cleaned up the table. Didn't you kiss me? I froze. At the end of the 3rd year of high school, a quiet lunch break, I reached over to Mark Connie to draw the curtains, and his eyelashes trembled as the light dimmed. Then I adjusted my posture a little, and it seemed that I was sleeping more soundly. The young man's delicate facial features reveal a kind of flamboyant goo. I suddenly lost my weight. I think I've gathered all the courage I've had in 18 years and leaned slowly towards him. Then he pressed it to the side of his face and gently touched it. In the days that followed, I felt like a thief. I blushed with embarrassment. So you weren't asleep at the time? He smirked. How can I sleep when you're so close to me? He is. Therefore, willingly, and willingly, I habitually click on the app to hide my embarrassment. As soon as he entered Weibo, Mark Connie's mobile phone rang. It's a special attention to the online tone, which I'm familiar with. I thought it was strange that after logging out and logging in, his phone rang again. He cleaned up the table and sat down next to me. Don't try. I paid special attention to your Weibo. I looked at him in horror. How do you know about my Weibo? He smirked again. Your writing style, your IP address, it's all analyzed. I gave a thumbs up in admiration. You shouldn't be a director. You should be a detective. Thank you for sure. Chatting and chatting. We talked about the award ceremony. I still have palpitations. Why did you faint? Tired, he said casually. There were a lot of rumors about you fainting at that time. I think, Ivy Evans. He called out to me suddenly, in a deep voice, and approached inch by inch with a seductive epilogue. The breath is getting closer, and the sound of heartbeats is entwined. When the tips of our noses touch, we don't look away at the same time. Chloe sat next to her, scrutinizing us. Seeing us stop, she was anxious. Kiss it. It's for me. The days passed slowly, but with a lot of hope. I was very idle during the summer vacation, but Mark Connie was very busy, and often a night scene had to be filmed until the early hours of the morning. I would sometimes bring them something to eat, and gradually, I became familiar with the crew. That day, Mark Connie suddenly said, "Why don't you live with me?" I gave him a wary look. He smiled meaningfully. I'm not at ease. I always felt that Malcolm wasn't going to give up. On the day the crew finished, I went to see them off, but Mark Connie wasn't there. He answered the phone and hurried away. I thought I'd be looking for you, Chloe said. His phone couldn't get through. Suddenly remembered his words that day. Today was the day of Malcolm's detention expiration. I searched aimlessly for a long time, until the doorman in the school group asked, "Who is in the music classroom? Why are you playing the piano with the door locked?" Piano. I was shocked. When we arrived, Malcolm was playing Mark Connie. Mark Connie, who is unconscious and hot all over. He laughed and called out as I hugged him, "Ivy Evans." Malcolm ended up in prison as well, not just for intentional wounding, but for other heinous charges. He has long been cornered, and revenge on us is the only outlet for the rest of his dismal life. But knowing that it was revenge, when he heard him say that he still had my photo and video in his hand, Mark Connie still went. When his parents arrived, Mark Connie hadn't woken up. From Mrs. Connie, I learned how he spent those 8 years. Mark Connie had already noticed something was wrong with me, and after I left, he found out. He beat Dylan to the death. After Dylan's serious injury, row as the Connie family is powerful, and it is difficult to suppress the matter. Can only contact other girls who have been hurt by Dylan on this matter, and confirm Dylan's crime. Mark Connie's story has finally turned into a small one. The family went abroad, but Mark Connie's temperament changed drastically. He no longer touches the piano and rarely speaks to people. Later, when he saw the piano, he became dizzy and nauseous until he passed out. The doctor said he was stressed because he saw the video of me curled up on the piano. Dylan. It wasn't until a year later, when he saw that I had opened a new novel online, that he finally smiled. She's writing stories again. It was only then that he slowly perked up. They actually returned home 4 years ago. He has eaten and seen the food and beautiful scenery mentioned in each of my novels. The most out of the ordinary thing he did was that on the day I graduated, he took the same flight with me and came to town. He said, "He has to come and see the place where you want to work and live in the future." At this, Mrs. Connie smiled and hugged me with tears in her eyes. So he didn't dare to look for me. He didn't dare to come near me, because he thought I blamed him. During the 8 years I tried to forget him, he lived in self-reproach. Mark Connie woke up, and Mrs. Connie didn't go on. He smiled helplessly. "Don't take my mother's word for it," I cried hoarsely. "Then tell me, why did you suddenly come to me again?" "Because I found you remember me," like he said before, based on the style and IP address. He was sure that I was following him. "You follow me and write such a careful review. I guess you don't blame me," he said firmly. "As long as you don't blame me, I'll do anything." At that moment, it was as if I had returned to my high school days, and the teenager was boundless in the moon for many people, but he only shone on me. I said, "I never blamed you." He touched my head. "Okay." Love was surging more than ever, and I asked him again, "What was that sentence you said under the umbrella on the day the college entrance examination ended?" "I like you." This time I didn't make a fuss, and I replied, "Me too." He pulled me closer and kissed me. This time, Chloe came in after a kiss. "What the hell is the story? What 8 years? Who is Malcolm? What's the deal with the piano?" She was frantic and looked at me pitifully. "Can you satisfy the curiosity of a CP fan?" Mark Connie and I both laughed at her. "I think classmates can be revived." I brushed aside Dylan's part, but it still caused a heated discussion among readers. Ivy Evans should have called the police. A man who has been abandoned has no courage. If it were me, I wouldn't have survived. But at least let's make it clear. I watched the comments and stunned. If I had to do it again, I think my choice might have been different. Soon, a comment was liked, "The scar is not worth being revealed. What should be praised is the courage to endure in a desperate situation." This is Mark Connie's ID. 2 years later, a new drama directed by Mark Connie and written by Ivy Evans became popular all over the internet. At the same ceremony, Mark Connie presented Ivy Evans with the award for Best Original Screenplay. The host asked Mark Connie, "What happened to the ending of the novel you want to know?" He laughed. "It's a happy ending." The host then asked Ivy Evans, "How did you feel about giving you the award from Mark Connie?" Ivy Evans opened his hands to him. "Hug me," the keyboard sounded, and I stretched. "That's the end of Classmate." Mark Connie came over and grabbed me by the waist, and took me in his arms. The end.